The cornfield isn't just a plot of land, it is a living history. Tucked deep in the highlands of Sulawesi, hours north of my village, it sits where the mountain air turns thin and the forest grows thick with secrets. For generations, my family has bled into this soil. My grandfather, then my father, and now the weight of the harvest fell to me. I had just turned 20 when my father sat me down. His leg was propped up, encased in heavy bandages, the result of a hit and run by some city teenagers who had been racing bikes on our dirt roads. They had vanished into the woods after the accident, and despite the police searches, the forest hadn't given them back. "It is time to prove yourself," he said, his voice gravelly. "Stay 2 nights. Guard the field. But listen to me. Never let the fire go out. Keep the edges of the field in your sight. If the fire dies, the boundaries vanish." I felt the weight of his old hunting rifle on my shoulder and the pride in his eyes, but behind that pride there was a shadow, a flickering fear I had never seen before. Night 1. The whispers in the stalks. I reached the field by noon. The corn stood tall, a golden sea whispering as the wind brushed through the stalks. I climbed the old treehouse we'd built years ago. It stood like an ancient sentry, gray and weathered. Inside, I found the familiar tools of the trade, a moth-eaten mat, a wooden chest of candles borrowed from the local church, and the oil lantern. I spent the afternoon rigging the clangers, tin cans filled with rocks, strung on a line around the perimeter. If anything stepped out of the tree line, I would hear it. As the sun dipped behind the peaks, the air turned ice cold. I lit the bonfire on the ground and the lantern in the loft. The first night was a game of shadows. I sat on the edge of the treehouse, smoking a Marlboro, watching the orange glow dance on the corn. I must have drifted off because I woke to a rhythmic clink, clink, the clangers. I grabbed my flashlight and swept the beam across the field. Nothing, just the wind. But when morning came, I found a section of the field where the corn heads hadn't just been stepped on. They had been bent and snapped downward, as if something very tall had leaned over them to watch me sleep. Night 2. The fire dies. The second day felt heavy. The silence of the forest was too absolute. As the sun set, the trees at the edge of the field didn't look like trees anymore. They looked like twisted, humanoid shapes reaching out for the light. I struggled to stay awake. I drank water, I paced the small wooden platform, but a sudden, unnatural lethargy washed over me. I collapsed onto the mat and fell into a dream of drowning in black water. I bolted upright at 2 a.m. My heart was a hammer against my ribs. The air was deathly silent, no wind, no crickets. Then I heard it, a wet, dragging sound coming from the center of the field. I looked out. Standing amidst the golden stalks was a figure. It was impossibly thin, draped in shadows that seemed to bleed into the air around it. It didn't walk, it drifted, the corn parting silently before it. It was heading straight for the treehouse. "Stop right there!" I screamed, my voice cracking. The thing didn't flinch. It kept coming, its head tilting at an angle that would have snapped a human neck. I leveled the rifle and fired. The crack of the gun shattered the silence, the bullet whistling just over its head. In the blink of an eye, the figure vanished. I spun around, scanning the dark. My breath was coming in ragged gasps. Then I felt the wood of the ladder vibrate. Creak, creak, creak. Something was climbing. I looked down at the ground to see the figure's long, my pale fingers gripping the rungs. And that's when I saw the horror my father had warned me. The fire was dead. Only a pile of gray ash remained. I had been so focused on the field that I hadn't fed the flames. The creature's head cleared the floorboards. It had no face, only a tight mask of grayish skin and eyes that looked like holes burnt into parchment. I didn't have time to reload. I grabbed the only thing I had, the glass oil lantern. I threw it with everything I had. It shattered against the creature's shoulder, bathing its back in burning kerosene. The thing let out a sound that wasn't a scream. It was the sound of tearing metal. It tumbled off the ladder, a living torch, and began to bolt. It didn't run for the forest. It ran through the corn. The dry husks caught instantly. I watched from the treehouse, paralyzed, as the creature sprinted through the field, leaving a trail of inferno behind it. Within minutes, the golden sea was a roaring wall of orange and red. The heat was blistering, forcing me to climb down and run for the dirt road. The aftermath, I stood by my old pickup truck and watched my family's legacy burn to the ground. In the roar of the flames, I thought I could still hear that metallic screaming fading into the mountains. I returned home at dawn, covered in soot, my eyes hollow. I prepared myself for my father's rage, for the shame of losing the harvest. But when I walked through the door, my father simply looked at me. He saw the singed hair, the trembling hands, and the terror etched into my face. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask about the corn. He just pulled me into a silent hug. "The field can be replanted," he whispered, "but the forest doesn't let go of everyone." We never spoke of it again. But sometimes when the wind blows from the north, I can still smell the scent of burnt corn and kerosene, and I wonder if those teenagers who vanished are still out there, guarding a field that no longer exists.